I remember, we were totally about making this whole pivot, the shift now towards welcoming the outsider. I remember our pastor at the time saying, the church is the only organization in the world that exists for the people that are not here yet. And that really resonated with all of us. And he shifted to focus like, yes, we've got to bring those people in. There are so many people that need to be here, to need to receive the love of Christ. There's people missing. And so how do we think for the outsider and not think for the usual people that we've been seeing every week?
Welcome to the Huntley Leadership Podcast, helping leaders be a positive catalyst in the people they support, the organizations they serve, and the communities they live. This podcast will make you think, laugh, and grit your teeth with new determination to make your parish or business a place of transformation, passion, and purpose. If you're still breathing, you are powered for impact. I just bought a house a year ago, and I remember going up to the house when it was for sale. Had beautiful curb appeal. I walk in the front door, it's this beautiful staircase, high ceilings, and the first thing my eye is drawn to is the third step that's kind of smashed on the front lip. I remember thinking to myself, why don't they fix that? This is a beautiful house, and the first thing I see is that. Well, that was about a year ago, and my step is still smashed, and I have done nothing. And it's like, why not? And in fact, when people come into my house, the first thing I think to myself is, I hope they don't notice. But of course they notice. But isn't it interesting how we can move into our spaces, know that some things could be addressed, and yet we start to get used to them? My name is Ron Huntley. Welcome to the Huntley Leadership Podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about welcoming environments. We're going to be inviting environments. And in fact, we're going to create a tool. We have a tool for you in the link below that is for inviting environments inventory. It's going to take you through 5 questions and 5 exercises to help you look through your space through the lens of an outsider so that you can action what we're going to talk about today. My guest today is from Montreal, Canada. Her name's Eleonora Cau. Ellie, welcome to the show.
Oh, hi, thanks, Ron, for having me here.
It's a lot of fun. And the reason why we're talking about this today, I coached Ellie's Parish years ago, and it was so much fun. And I remember when you guys were launching Alpha, you were on the leadership team, and you're getting really excited about being a part of this launch. And, you know, like all churches, we have what we have for space and parking and whatever it is that we have. I'd love for you to share with people, you know, what that was like as you were getting ready, and then tell people a little bit about the space that you are going to be using and kind of what you went through in your head.
You're right. So you did coach us at the very beginning. I used to be on the senior leadership team at our parish. And I remember, we were totally about making this whole pivot, the shift now towards welcoming the outsider. I remember our pastor at the time saying, the church is the only organization in the world that exists for the people that are not here yet. And that really resonated with all of us. And he shifted to focus like, yes, we've got to bring those people in. There are so many people that need to be here, to need to receive the love of Christ. There's people missing. And so how do we think for the outsider and not think for the usual people that we've been seeing every week? So we decided to, launch our first alpha. Great. Everyone's all excited, downloading all the program, watching the videos, assembling our team. Everyone was really willing. And then I was like, wait a second, let's just go check the space first. I just want to have an idea. Space. I love space. It's important to me. I love like being hospitable. I love making people feel welcome, and visually environments are really important to me. So I went to go down it was in our church basement. And it was the stereotypical church basement, right? So a lot of forgotten furniture, mustard yellow chairs from the 1960s, really hodgepodge, the collection of everything that the church had ever acquired over the last several decades had been found in this basement. Just very dusty, dirty. I was actually like with these eyes, I was very horrified to see the experience. And I don't want to be harsh or disparaging, to what we had in this space, but really, if I put myself in the shoes of an outsider coming in, I couldn't imagine how they would be receptive. I didn't want to spend my time there. I mean, goodness, the toilets looked like they could have been in a prison, like that kind of level of just neglect that had been there. And we put up with
Yeah.
this. So we made that shift. I proposed, like, we've got to fix this space.
Mm.
Um, but there are some more pragmatic people that don't see the value of why do we need to change this space? We have exactly what we need. We've got tables, we've got chairs. Why do we need to give care and attention to
Mm.
this space? Um, and I just thought that, again, you have people from the outside. So what are they, get inside their head? What are they thinking? They might have these stereotypes, these preconceived notions of what a church looks like. So something that's for old
Yeah.
people, lots of old spaces, old furniture, um, maybe a lot of cast offs kind of thing, and not focused on welcoming a new person in. And so that's exactly what our situation was. So we
Mm.
wanted to counteract that. We wanted to lower the person's barriers. We know that if you can lower a person's barriers, they are more likely to be trusting of coming into the
Mm.
space. They're more likely to be then open to hearing possibly the message of Jesus Christ down the line. But you have to remove whatever barriers you can in the first place.
Love it. Okay. So because when I thought about talking with you about this today, I thought to myself from the angle of desire, um, action, and impact. And so what I'm hearing from you is you have a gift, like, because we all have different gifts. And like you said, I love space. I love welcoming space, of making people feel welcome, and space is a part of that. And so that's part of how your DNA. I heard it said one time that people are multipliers, organizers, or beautifiers. And I know my daughter's a beautifier. She makes everything better. And it sounds like you have part of that gift too, or all of it. Um, but not everybody does. And because you said, well, we brought that up, and there are other people that were more pragmatic. Oh, wait a minute, we have chairs. Yes, so they're yellow and they're everybody's hand-me-downs, but they're still chairs. You can sit in it and it's safe. And we have tables, although they're drawn on and everything. And so there you go. There's a difference of giftedness, of sensibilities around this. But what I'm hearing from you, Ellie, is you had a vision for what environment could be and the impact it has on the people you're striving for, whereas the other person was looking at it from a pragmatic perspective for the people we already have.
Yeah,
It's like, we don't care. We love Jesus. We love the church. We don't need to go spend money. It's just us. Relax. Like, we don't care. It's like, it's not for you.
absolutely. I mean, that's exactly it. So definitely most churches, I mean, they're struggling, right? Financially, we get it. So they're not going to want to think of putting in any more money into something
Mhm.
that, again, they don't see the value, they don't see the return on investment on that. But you have to think of it as an investment. Just put a minimal amount in, and I believe the impact that you will receive will be greater. And I can talk about some of the fruit after. But again, I want to shift that perspective and just encourage people to view it as an investment in your
Mhm.
space. And it doesn't have to be, tens of thousands of dollars. You can just do
No.
anything on a small shoestring budget.
Well, tell us what you did. So what did you do?
So it was quite simple. So again, our our pastor, to his credit, he again was one of those people that was very pragmatic and couldn't really get the why of why we needed to invest in this space. But he had said that, I'll do whatever it takes to if it brings people in, to the extent that if rap music brings people into our pews, then we will put rap music in the liturgy. So I said, I'm going to hold you to this, right? And so he allowed us the freedom to have access to the space and to do what we wanted with it. But I was also aware of the budget. And so what we did was, well, first of all, our pastor done a great job of preaching in the pews to the people that were already there, but the need to, one, go focus on the outsider that's not in the pew, and two, to invest in this alpha. And so how could they do this? By just, well, first of all, being welcoming to anyone new that would come into the church. But the idea that we had to rally around this new alpha that we're launching in anticipation of bringing in a whole bunch of new people got people really excited, and they wanted to channel their energy into something tangible, to
Mm,
reflect, what he'd been preaching about. And so
yeah.
my husband and I, we just literally went around to people, and just tried to talk to them about what they'd been hearing and get them excited about the Alpha and get them excited about how they can be involved. And so what we did was, two things. We fundraised actually on our own, asking
Yep.
people, hey, would you consider just like donating a little bit, to revamping the space? And again, we pitched the vision of why it was important, sent them down to the ugly basement so they could see for themselves and experience it. And two, we asked for people, to volunteer their time. Some people love doing, acts of service and, pitching in and doing it, a good act. And so that was, again, two tangible ways that people could get involved in the project. And so that's what we did. Again, recruited donations and people, time, labor, set ourselves a little budget. The director of Alpha at the time, we made a little plan of kind of what we would do with the space. And then we set up over a weekend. We, got these volunteers together, slotted them in, figured out how we were going to, attack the space. And it was really, really, really simple in theory. It was just like, envision the color scheme, the whole thing, paint the walls,
Yeah.
clean everything, prep, and adding in like, maybe this is going to sound detailed, but I really wanted the vibe to be welcoming. Like,
Yeah.
if you're in good relations with your family, like coming home for a Sunday dinner, just like that warmth, that kind of vibe. And so it was going to be investing in a bit of lighting. I pride myself in saying I was one of the first people to be, this string light trend. I was one of the first people to push for that. So we put string lights in and added fabric and softness and cushions and throw pillows and a bit of like rugs, all from IKEA. It wasn't very expensive, but just the idea was to make it look like a really warm, either, nice restaurant you would go out to with your friends, really cozy vibe, or just, a little bit of that, someone's not quite like a grandma's living room, but just like that welcoming, cozy space where you wanted to go in and you wanted to come back.
And it's fun talking to you about this because you have that gift and that charisma. Like even when you talk about fabrics and feelings and vibe, it's like, wow, I can enter into that with you. I don't have that gift. Like if you gave me $1 million and said, Ron, redecorate your office, I would spend the $1 million and nobody would know the difference. I don't have that gift. But as you talk about it, I think to myself, I'm drawn into it. Like I can get excited. Like, again, what I'm hearing is vision.
Yeah.
And I'm seeing leadership. And so I would follow you guys on that. I would have loved to have been one of those people in the pews who you tapped, shared that vision with. And even that vision turns into us, like one of the things about bringing people along is increasing the pain of staying the same. And you did that by bringing people into the basement. Come look at this. It's like, yeah, exactly. So you put your finger on the pain point, you casted a vision and you invited people to get involved. And that's such a neat way. I mean, imagine what was that weekend like in terms of, everybody working together to transform something collaboratively. What did that do for
It
you
was
guys?
so much fun. I think it was also one of the first times where we had, like a communal activity throughout the parish where we could get people sort of involved. I can't really recall anything else in recent, years just prior to that where we, assembled quite a number of people to work together and do something. We'd start the day with prayer and then we had music on in the background. It was like, chatting. It's people on ladders and, squeezing underneath with paintbrushes in the corners. So it was a lot of fun. I think everyone really enjoyed the experience. And, by the end of it, it was incredible what we sort of achieved and put together. So I think people saw that and felt the reward of it after. And I mean, let alone, people getting a chance to preview the space on like the opening night of Alpha. I mean, that was like a transformation in and of itself as well.
Yeah, I can't help but imagine, in terms of the impact of that on the team and the parish. I would think that my desire to invite people would be that much higher because I've put my own blood, sweat, and tears into this. I've watched it transform. I know the heart we all had as we were doing it. And so I want this to succeed. And it probably increased people's confidence to invite, did it?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I could now trust to invite, my neighbors or acquaintances to this space. I had put basically like a stamp of approval on it. I've seen it and I felt confident enough that despite the fact that we were in technically a church basement, and definitely some
Yeah.
people don't want to step foot into church, I felt like if we could just, get them in the door, have those welcoming faces, and just get them in the space, that they would be immediately sort of disarmed. And again, that
Mm.
their barriers would be lowered, like I mentioned before.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so beautiful. A couple of things too I think about is, Father Michael is one of those pragmatic guys going, "Hey, it's good enough. Like, what difference does it make?" I can just see him saying it too, right? And but he allowed it to happen, and he allowed it to happen because it was consistent with his vision. It wouldn't have been his approach,
Yeah,
but you can't say this and not be willing to do this. And
exactly.
and and you guys went above and beyond to kind of help other people see that and invited them to get involved. So kudos to him for allow giving you guys the freedom, not micromanaging things, but trusting people who have gifts, seeing people who have gifts, and allowing them to bring their part of the solution to life. And I think that's important.
Definitely. I mean, what matters the most to him is he needs to understand the why, and then also to see the fruit. And so, as of the first night or the first couple of nights, people that came into that space were going up to him, and he was involved. I think he might have been the MC of that first alpha, but just saying, "I cannot believe this is the same space." They were just in total shock, and they said it feels like a
Yeah.
upscale restaurant, and all these really nice compliments. And he could then begin to appreciate the
Mm.
impact that it was having on people. Where obviously he didn't have the vision to see the space for what it could be beforehand. But once he saw the
Yes.
fruit, I think he was totally won over. And that just, gives you more momentum to start saying, yes to other things that, we might have changed in the parish for any number of
Yeah.
reasons. Because
Yeah.
Again, just get a convincing why, and be sold on the fruit. And that helps you have confidence in your people.
So true. Ellie, we're recording this. Part of the reason for this podcast is we're going to be attaching it to the course that we're doing on Parish Evangelization course for leaders, which really is designed for alpha leaders, or if people are using a different tool, whoever's leading that tool for evangelization. But something you said is important, and that was that it's this only institution that's literally designed for the people that aren't there yet. And so to have this outsider's perspective, and that's why we're including this tool for inviting environments inventory, to help people have a method to go through their space with the lens of an outsider.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't tell you, I was talking to somebody the other day who said, we've been running Alpha for 6 years and we haven't quite reached people beyond the pews. I hear that all the time.
Right.
And so it's like, then you're not evangelizing. You're using an evangelistic tool, but you're not evangelizing, because the fruit of evangelism is making new disciples. And I remember Father Mike mentioning to me he had a cold one time, or wasn't feeling good. His energy level was low. It was the end of a long day, and it was Alpha night, and he's supposed to be at a table, and he's like, "Oh, I didn't want to go. I didn't want to hang around with people." And he was feeling sorry for himself, and he's thinking about calling in. I can't make it. I'm not feeling good. He thought, "Oh," washes his face, throws on a shirt, heads downstairs, and he said, "Ron, I sat at a table, an Alpha table, and I didn't know anybody."
Wow.
He
Yeah.
said, "You know how excited I was as the pastor of this church to sit down at a table in my church to talk about Jesus." Alpha's all about Jesus. And I didn't know anybody at my table. He said, instantly, I felt 100% better
Oh,
because this is why I became a
yeah.
priest.
That's what it's
And
about. That's amazing. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And so your guys' focus on the outsider, what would you say to people, Ellie, who, we're running Alpha, but we can't seem to get outside the pews? What are your, when you even hear that, what are you thinking?
Well, I mean, the first thing I would want to know is, do you know who you're trying to target? Because outsider is literally everyone, outside of the, I don't know, 100 or so people that are within those four walls, everyone in the neighborhood and beyond, right? So
Mhm.
who do you want to target? Because if you're just looking within, let's say, your neighborhood, get to know who's in your neighborhood. So in our case, our parish is a lot of families here, so young-ish parents. There's definitely older grandparents as well too, but it's primarily a lot of families. And so once we knew that, okay, well, let's start by inviting, your neighbors and those people within that milieu. You got to now cater the space and the experience to meet that type of population and who they are and what their interests are and where they're at. You really have to know your people. By contrast, if we're also next door to a university. If we wanted to target that market, that's a whole different vibe. You're not going to have Design Your Alpha to have necessarily formal sit-down meals with plates and utensils. Maybe it's you're doing catering out of takeout boxes and everyone's sitting around a bench together. It's more hangout style. So you really, again, have to know what is your audience and think what that person has interest in and who they are. You have to know who you're dealing with, basically. And so work backwards from there, or that would inform your decision of how you then tailor your alpha. I feel strongly about that. So.
No, I agree with you. Again, I love hearing you talk about it because that term vibe is so important because, as dads, the corny dad jokes and, dad has the same clothes he wore since high school and whatever else it is. So we can get into this funk where our vibe is actually not very attractive to the outsiders at all. And I think churches can kind of be dad churches,
Yeah.
It's they just have this vibe that's so dated. It's embarrassing for the teenage kids,
You got to really challenge the norm and you got to think outside the box and, because again, especially if you're going to put it in a church basement or in a church space, you really have to then be extra creative to get people to see past the church walls, the church name, the church sign, all that sort of thing. So they will, approach the space.
That's so cool. I'd love for you to just share, because again, in those early phases, I love telling the story. And if you guys want to Google Father Michael Clare and Alpha, there's some great videos out there that he's made. And, I remember him when he was at our parish, and it was so fun to meet with him every week and get to know. It was just a treat. He is not the same person that came to Halifax all those years ago. But one of the turning points for him was Easter Vigil. Do you remember that story? Can you share it with our listeners?
Yeah, so you're referring to when he went to do an internship at St. Benedict's Parish, which is your old parish. He was asked by his bishop to go, and we're hearing about this divine renovation thing. They need to evangelize. Why don't you go? And so Father Mike went off for 6 months, and was learning about all the things, reading all things. I think he was getting intensely coached by you as well. But I think his aha moment came really at the Easter Vigil when he was there and saw. I guess I don't know how many people were there. Were there 15 or something? Adults, something like that. A big amount of people, of adults getting baptized, not infants, adults willingly, consciously choosing to get baptized. And he was so blown away by this. And he tells the story better than me, but he called up the church secretary to go back to the records at our own parish to say, hey, Anna, when was the last time that we had an adult baptism in our parish? And she had to go back record after record, book to look back. And I think it was something like 1979. 1979 was the last time that there was a recorded adult baptism in our parish. And he recounts it as experiencing this almost need for repentance on behalf of the parish and on behalf of, the lack of outward reach, the lack of bringing in new people into the faith, which is what we're called to do, is to, bring people to Christ. And literally we hadn't been doing that other than infants that, they might come in and you won't see them again, but an adult, we hadn't brought anyone in. So he was instantly converted, I think, towards mission from that moment on. It really became very concrete, what the impact is of all these principles he'd been learning. And now he can see the actual fruit of this. And that got him really excited to get going with implementing lots of things at our parish.
It's been so fun to watch you guys because he went, I remember he literally self-identified. This isn't me throwing him under the bus. These are his words. Father Fuddy Duddy. He said, I'm just here to learn a couple of tips. And I remember saying to him, I'm not interested in tips. I'm interested in your transformation, and
Mm.
God's going to transform you. Although what God's gone on to do in and through him and you guys is far exceeds my expectations. Like God far surpassed anything that I hoped was possible. And share again, I just so excited about what you guys are doing. And I know nothing's perfect, and I know we're always finding holes and gaps, and that's just leadership in general. But where are you guys at now? What are you doing? So from 1979, you hadn't had an adult baptism. He goes home very differently motivated. Paradigm has shifted to mission. What are you guys working on now?
So I think I'm forgetting another part of the story, which was I believe that he made in part of his prayer time with God was to say basically, I don't want to go through another Easter vigil or Easter weekend at our parish and not have an adult baptism.
Mm.
And when he came back, I think it was April, and I don't remember when Easter was, but it was shortly thereafter. But somehow there was this, I think, like a kid at the high school near us, and he was Jewish, but he
Mm.
wanted to convert to become Catholic. And so somehow it happened that he got all ready and everything, and he was the first adult, I guess, baptism that we
Yeah,
had that very Easter. And so it was kind of, or maybe it's like the year later, but within that
sure.
first year, I think like the realization of what his request or his prayer was fulfilled. And every year since then, we've had a minimum of one, if not several, a handful of people that have gone through the preparation process, and to actually be there standing up, on Easter. We do on Easter Sunday now, but
Yeah,
to be baptized. And so that's hugely incredible to, his speaks to his yes at the beginning of and
yeah.
repentance on behalf of this and the willingness to change. And so he was
Mm.
rewarded, we were rewarded with that fruitfulness that came after his yes.
Oh, that's so beautiful. And now you guys are at a space now where you're working with another parish and transplanting the principles and the mission and the passion into another space.
Absolutely. So, I mean, it's again those principles, like you said, and so, I mean, years later, then he's so blessed. He receives these amazing calls from the Lord, but he received a call from the Lord that we needed to move out even further, and he could see like a vision of revitalization, basically, of the city, and that was going to be we were going to play a role in this, and so somehow manifested this concept of sending out our people, giving like being generous with our people and our resources to help another
Mm.
parish to be lifted up and to be guided along and supported and coached in implementing all these practices that we had learned as well. And again, nothing's been perfect, and I'm sure they can. There's people on staff right now that are more aware of what's happening with the missionary partnership. But the idea again was to respond to the yes and to go forth, put some trust in these crazy ideas, which we know they're crazy because there's no way we would ever design to do this. So we know it comes from God.
Mhm.
Sometimes God is bigger than us, and not sometimes, all the time. It's something that it's a God-sized dream, and it's didn't come from Him. So that's how we knew, like, okay, we got to be obedient here. And so that's what they've done, and they're working now on they're beyond just the best practices of Alpha. They're now looking at, okay, how do we do this again? How do we help this parish that we're helping be a branch off and support a third parish? So I think they're in those stages right now.
It's such a great vision, Ellie, because there are so many, most dioceses are shrinking at a record pace. Mass attendance is going by the way of the dodo bird. Parishes are aging up. There are just so many stories of decline. And yet in the midst of that, there's a story of hope. There's a story of multiplication. There's a story of transformation. And it's so exciting. And I hope for you as listeners, as you listen to this, like we're literally talking about a church that hadn't had an adult baptism since 1979 and had a church basement filled with throwaway stuff that was dusty, dirty, and just not a great place to be. And from very pragmatic, practical, humble roots, they are able to begin to put intentionality behind all the little things they were doing as they cast their gaze outwards. And it's through that heart of obedience to God, that sense of identity that we exist too reach the lost, that they started to do this stuff and to reclaim vision, reclaim hope, put that hope into action, that action into fruitfulness. And now they're doing something I don't know happening anywhere else in any of the churches I coach. They're all on this journey, but nobody's got to that intentional generosity like you guys have, Ellie. And so you don't have to be Superman to get from here to there, but you do have to have a super big yes to Jesus and take those steps like you guys did to continue to make it right. So what an inspiring story, Ellie. Thank you for being on the podcast today.
My pleasure, Ron, always.
So for those of you that have been following along, again, go to the Inviting Environment Inventory tool, click the link, 5 questions and 5 exercises to allow you to walk through your space, hopefully with another person or two, to see it through the lens of an outsider, because the vibe of what you're doing matters. And I hope that if you're not on mission yet, you're going to listen to this podcast today and say, to heck with it, we're all in. Let's do this. And assess your space. And if you're any good at carpentry at all, please give me a call. Help me fix my step. That would be a real big blessing to us. Thank you for what you do in leadership. God bless you. And we'll see you all next time.
I want to encourage you, as you lead this week, be faithful to God and generous to others. See you next time. And remember, if you're still breathing, you are powered for impact.